All right, guys, welcome to the show. We're here live with Gary McGrady.
Hey. That was
Gary,
quick.
I know.
Just like that,
we
we were
just
up.
went up. You guys are looking at a picture of Fort Myers, Florida, people wading through that water down after all of Irma this weekend, right, Gary?
Fort Myers got really hit. I mean, look, this was never going to be, I think a lot of people saw the images of Harvey down in Houston, and it snapped them into attention for this. This was never going to be a real big flooding storm. I mean, obviously with storm surge, which may be what Fort Myers is dealing with here, storm surge is always a bad thing. But the rain was not going to cause a big deal, at least not yet. And so Fort Myers, so everybody knows, Fort Myers is on the west coast of Florida. It's north of Naples, which is kind of that southwestern quadrant of Florida. And they had wind gusts down there, you know, up close to 150. I haven't seen any more than that, but I mean, they got hard hit. They got hard hit by the major storm surge, maybe 10, 15 feet.
Yeah, so if we talk for a second, let's come back into the newsroom for a second. If we talk for a second about what exactly happened this weekend, did Irma go the track that we expected?
Do you know what? This is a great thing. I think I'm going to do something on this later, but the forecast for Irma was about as good as forecasts get, and here's why. Remember when Irma was going across the Virgin Islands down there in the northern leewards? The Hurricane Center put out a forecast, and it was a 5-day forecast, and it literally took Irma up and right across the Keys, and probably within 50 miles of the track that she ended up taking. Now, that was way back 5-6 days ago. Now, the track did change a couple of times back and forth. I mean, and the tracks on hurricanes will always change a little bit. But I just, you know, all the Floridians knew it was coming their way. And it was phenomenal. The forecast was phenomenal.
And if we look at it now, I mean, this is sort of an updated track, right,
that's
of what's
where it is
happening now.
So it's just right around Tallahassee. That's where Florida State is, basically. And the winds are down. It's now a tropical storm. So the winds, 65 miles per hour. There may be a gust to 80 or so, and that could still do some damage. There's no doubt about that. But it is winding down exactly like it was supposed to do. Pressure's coming up. It's moving pretty good. Northwest at 17 miles per hour. That's still important because you got to keep that rain going. You don't want that rain sitting in one spot too long. Hey, call up this one.
Yeah.
Now this is the how it's presenting itself right now in terms of the radar. Most of the rain has moved out of Florida. That's great. You're still getting a few spiring backside bands. Those are nothing. But where all that yellow and orange is going up into Georgia, South Carolina, over here into parts of Alabama, eventually Mississippi. So as long as that rain keeps moving and it keeps breaking up and it keeps weakening, we're going to be in good shape. I just talked to my parents on the way to work this morning. They live in Greensboro, North Carolina.
I'm familiar with
and
that.
they're waiting. I mean, they're under a wind advisory there, so they're just on the edge of that rain. And eventually it'll go up to the north, farther to the north, up into Tennessee, and it'll just probably spin itself out.
A lot of you guys were asking about North Carolina too when we had questions last week and about preparations. It looks like they are going to get a little edge of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
not much at all. You see the bands coming through Charleston right now. Okay, those potentially have some tornadoes.
That red part.
Yeah. There's so everybody. It's funny how every time we have storms, people learn new terms. And the big term with this storm, the dirty storm, the dirty part of the storm.
Is that?
It's usually the eastern side of the storm, northeastern side of the storm. It's where most of what we call the convergence is, a lot of lifting, turning in the atmosphere. So that they're under tornado watches down there now because you see all the little reds, those are little cells that could come across and spin up some tornadoes. One thing that surprised me about this storm is that it didn't produce a lot of tornadoes, which is a good thing. It's a great thing. But since it didn't produce a lot of tornadoes, that surprised me. I thought this storm would produce a lot more in the way of tornadoes.
Because of why? What's the reasoning for hurricanes doing that?
All of them have a personality.
Yeah.
And this one just is not. The things aren't coming together conducively enough to produce us again. And that's a good thing.
Also, guys, a live look at Tifton, Georgia.
I don't know where Tifton, Georgia
I'd have to look on the
is.
map, but we're kind of tracking. They're giving us various live shots of what the states are experiencing.
So I suspect. Find out where Tifton is really quick.
Let's go on the map.
We're undercover here, but I suspect that most of what's left from this storm looks a lot like what we're seeing right now in Tifton, Georgia. Let's see where Tifton is.
Let's see where it is on the
real far to the north. Okay, yeah. So right now, Tifton, Georgia is kind of in the meaty part of the storm. It's just in southern Georgia.
Southern Central.
So you see it's blowing. I mean, they're going to probably have sustained 25, 35 miles an hour. And then they'll get an occasional gust higher than that.
And
I
then,
don't know what those super tall
I know,
things
trees.
are, but they seem to be faring well.
And then once again, guys, the live look at Fort Myers, so we see the flooded roads. But
Oh, look, sunshine.
oh yeah, but this weekend, and you were here in studio in the weekend, kind of talking about it on Sunday, because everything was that really the main time to be watching this Sunday morning in Florida?
Yeah. It comes a point in time where you simply you stop forecasting. You just catch the storm. And I grew up in the hurricane zone.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I've worked in hurricane zones, and at some point it's time to catch the storm. You just you stop forecasting so much, and you start dealing with what the storm is doing. I mean, you're always forecasting to an extent, but that's kind of where they were. Everybody had gotten where they needed to get. Those that were going to clear the keys cleared the keys, and then you just wait and see. I think what's a game changer, right or wrong, is being able to watch live video from everybody or anybody.
There was so much coming in too.
You know what I mean? Because you know the media has always been trying to get there and show you different things, right or wrong, however they do that. But just to watch normal people, there was a guy down in the Keys yesterday that had a live feed going, and you could just kind of see what was happening. Some of the storm chasers, right or wrong, that were down there probably doing silly things, but you kind of got a sense of what it looked like down there.
I saw some reporters from various outlets getting blown away. They were in the thick of it. They were looking at people on their balconies being like, this person shouldn't be out there, but then they were right there in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's wild.
It's one of the stupid things about what we do and how we do it. I mean, I saw a reporter tied himself to the balcony. Give me a break. I mean, that's just stupid.
I wish I'd seen that.
This is all Dan Rather's fault. Remember, you know who Dan Rather
Yeah,
is?
of
Okay,
course.
so Dan Rather, I forget what hurricane it was. He literally held on to a phone, a telephone pole in the middle of a hurricane. And since then, I guess all these reporters think they need to be out in it, kind of getting blown away.
Wow.
And I don't know. Maybe I do the same thing.
Maybe.
Not judging anybody here.
Where were you in the zone when you reported down there?
Well, I grew up in Houston. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we always were worrying about tropical storms, which were the worst because there was a lot more rain, and then hurricanes. And then I worked in North Carolina for 7 years, where we had huge Hurricane Floyd was a bad one down there. And we had several ones down there while I was working there. So we I've covered quite a bit of tropical stuff. So
essentially, what got hit the most? It moved up to Tampa. It moved up.
Tampa apparently didn't get hit that hard. And again, I yesterday when I went home, I kind of stepped away from the coverage and whatnot for a little while. But I don't think, and I'm sure they had flooding. I'm sure they had some wind damage. I'm sure they had a lot of rain. But thank goodness, I don't think they had any loss of life there, which is always a good thing. I think parts of Miami, I think the city of Miami maybe was surprised how much they did get from this storm. Because again, being on the dirty side, they had all that storm surge coming in. Negative storm surge. You saw the pictures from the Bahamas where the tide just took all the water out.
Yeah.
You saw that at Fort Myers and Naples. Tide took all the water out. So much water gets pulled up underneath a hurricane this large, and it stayed a 4 and a 5 for 3 or 4 days. So all that energy is being pulled in. So tide goes out and it's just sucking it out. It's called negative surge.
Okay, so it stayed a 4 and a 5, and then it decreased, right? At this point, it's a
once it starts
storm.
interfering with land, interacting with land, it weakens, and you get that eye over land, and it disrupts the moisture coming into the storm, and it rapidly decreases in intensity. This thing was really strong though, so it took a while to wrap up. It took a while to calm down. So had it been a hurricane of a 1 or 2 category when it made landfall yesterday, we would have a much lower tropical storm. Maybe we'd have a tropical storm with only 45 miles per hour, but it's still at 65 miles per hour.
And then is there still another one brewing? We were talking about Jose. Is it though?
Yeah.
Is it coming that direction?
Jose is formidable. I mean, it's still out there.
Yeah.
It's going to do a loop-de-loop this week. It's going to literally go in a circle. It's forecast to do that, and I have no reason to believe it won't. And we think that it will stay offshore. Some of the modeling yesterday suggested maybe that it wanted to take a turn to the north and to the northwest late, and maybe head towards maybe New England, Nova Scotia, places like that. But the newest modeling is suggesting that's not the case. So it probably gets turned off to sea, and we won't have to worry too much about Jose.
If you guys have any questions too, leave them in the comments below. We also have our post about Irma weakening to a tropical storm right below this stream, as we just chat about it. And Gary, happy to have you in
Is
the
that
studio.
us up there that's
Yeah.
all messed up?
It's kind of messed up. We're having a little issue with our Wirecast today, but it is going strong. And you were able to kind of play with this weekend and be here in the digital and bring people updates.
It's nice. It allows us to do it differently and get the word out immediately. And
Casual
it
setting.
gets shared and it gets traded around all over the place. So it's good.
So hurricane season kind of hopefully wrapping up soon.
Yeah, all the way through October.
Oh, it does go.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. So we can get October storms around here. And a lot of times in October, we're protected in a sense. As the cool air starts coming down from Canada, that helps us in simplistic terms. But yeah, until this season's over, we have the possibility of more storms. And look, we haven't even been affected really by any storms.
Right? And people were asking about that last week, but really not really negligible effects here in DC, right? From this one?
No, I don't think so.
Almost
I think we'll get some showers.
Some rain this week.
You're already beginning to see the clouds coming in. The clouds that we're seeing in DC this morning down to the south, they're all related to this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really high cirrus clouds we're getting now. So over the next couple of days, we'll be seeing more clouds and some showers from it.
And what about in general the 7-day forecast for you?
Most of the week we're going to have some showers related to this, and that could linger into the weekend. So, but I think we're going to be back up to 80 or so.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on what you like. What else? Any other questions?
I think that's it. Thanks for that recap on Irma.
Thank you.
Gary, you'll be around this week, or
every day.
We'll have him in
here.
Not
Thursday or Friday.
Let's snag him over for our stream. I always like having Gary join us. But guys, let us know if you have questions. We are going to kind of wrap up this coverage of the hurricane and then move over to YouTube in just a few minutes. Cool. Thanks Gary.
Guys.
and we need bridge inspections on a couple of the bridges. So do not line up heading back to the beach. Do not line up on Atlantic or Beach or JTB in anticipation of a quick opening. It's not going to be quick. So make sure that you understand that. Stay where you are, and we will put out information as soon as we have it about the best time to try to head back to the beaches. And again, as we bring bridges back online here in the next couple of hours, we'll make sure to push that information out as well.
And I would add, if you have an issue, unless it's a serious issue right now, please hold. Let's leave the 630 city open for the most important task at hand, and that is getting people out of areas that could flood. And again, if you have an emergency, call 911. And I would remind folks to put a white flag or something that represents a white flag. We need to get you out somewhere in your home that's visible from outside. With that, we'll take questions.
Mayor, how many fatalities have we seen in our area?
Chief, we don't have any reported at this time.
No reported fatalities?
No reported at this time. And I would also want to let people know that this was a statewide event. Most of the state is without power right now. So we're going to all just have to come together as the men and women of JEA begin their work with the people that are going to be here to help us get this city back to back to normal.
Give us an update on those rescue attempts. How many people, as of right now, have called or have gotten rescued from where they are?
So we've had general calls. This is all kind of calls over 608 hours. We don't have a breakdown on those as to which are rescue, which aren't. I saw significant activity when I was out this morning after I spoke with all of you.
Are the shelters going up?
20%. We've got room. So you can, please, go to a shelter if you are in one of the areas that we described. All right. We will keep you posted and updated, and let's go take care of people.
Catherine Susan Wolf,
Jennifer Yen Wang,
Su Chung Steve Wong,
Yin Ping Wang,
Yuk Ping Wong,
Brent James Woodall,
James John Woods,
Marvin Roger Woods,
Patrick J. Woods,
Richard Heron Woodwell,
David Terrence Woolley,
John Bentley Works,
Martin Michael Wortley,
Rodney James Wooten,
William Wren, retired,
John W. Wright, Jr.,
Neil Robin Wright,
Sandra Lee Wright,
Jupiter Yamben,
and my brother, Alan N. Palumbo. Alan, after 16 years, we miss you. You have a great niece, 2 great nephews that you've never seen.
and
I wish you were here. Your sister Donna misses you. Your brother Gary misses you. Thank you. God bless you, Alan.
and my sister Jean C. De Palma. No amount of years could erase the memories of you in my heart.
John D. Yamnicki, Sr.,
Cerise Yamadella,
Vicky Yancey,
Sherwin Yang,
Matthew David Yarnell,
Myrna Yuskala,
Shaquila Yasmin,
Olabasi Shadi Liani Yi,
Kevin W. Yoakum,
Edward P. York,
Kevin Patrick York,
Raymond R. York,
Suzanne Martha Humans,
Brighton Leroy Young Jr.,
Donald MacArthur Young,
Edmund G. Young Jr.,
Jacqueline Young,
Lisa L. Young,
Elkin Ewan,
Joseph C. Sokola,
Adele Agaby Zachary,
Arkady Zaltzman,
Edward J. Zambrana Jr.,
Robert Allen Zampiri,
Mark Zangrilli,
Christopher R. Zabar Jr.,
Ira Zaslow,
Kenneth Albert Zellman,
Abraham J. Zelmanowitz,
Martin Morales Zampalkos,
Shi Zheng,
Mark Scott Zemplin,
Xi Yao Justin Xiao,
Yu Gan Zhang,
Evelyn Zeminski,
Michael Joseph Zinsky,
Charles Allen Zion,
Julie Lynn Zipper,
Salvatore J. Zissa,
Prokopis Paul Zayos,
Joseph J. Zukala,
Andrew Stephen Zucker,
Igor Zulkerman, and my brother, Thomas Joseph Selleck. We will always miss Tom. That'll never stop. He's just very compassionate in everything that he did. He's very caring about not just his family, but the community that he lived in. He's very spontaneous, loving. He could make you smile, make you laugh without telling a joke. It was just kind of a gift that he had. He left behind a loving wife, Roseanne, large family, but not his own. But he was he was a runner. He was compassionate about that. Ran 10 miles a day, but he ran in the New York Marathon, for example, and twice came in first from the Staten Island, which is where we live. And I guess the end of it is just that we love them and miss them, and that's about all that you can do. Thank you.
And my beloved brother, Rudolph and Riccio. Rudy, you are my hero. You are the world's greatest younger brother. Please do me a favor and keep your eye out for Fran. She's down in Florida with Hurricane Irma. We love you, Rudy. Bye.
All right, guys, if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, we're continuing our coverage of the commemoration of the 16th anniversary of 9/11. And this is a shot, I know, can you believe it?
Can't believe it.
I'm here with Joe Spivak, one of our awesome photojournalists, to talk more about it because he and along with many others in our newsroom have really vivid, amazing memories and stories from that day, of course, whether they were here covering it at Fox 5 DC or elsewhere. But right now I'm bringing you a picture of New York City because Joe definitely has a connection to that. But quickly, I'm going to flash you over to our other feed just so you can see. Oh, it looks like it just stopped. So we had a shot of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The vice president was there for a wreath laying and more commemoration there where Flight 93 went down. So again, continued coverage here in New York City. So I'm going to bring this double screen here so we can talk a little more about it. Oops.
Pressure.
I know. We're supposed to have a lot of this coverage all day, especially as they have done in all previous years, read the names of the victims from what is Ground Zero, I think.
Yeah, I've actually never been there since they've made the memorial.
Oh, okay.
I haven't been back.
I've seen, this is the Oculus or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I haven't seen inside of it, but so many people have, and I've seen it in pictures, but I've seen the place where the World Trade stood and the sort of memorial they made there. But Joe has a really interesting story. You're from New York.
Yeah, yep. Born in New York City. All my family's from New York City. It's sort of weird to see that shot because the Twin Towers filled that sky. Like, to actually see that open space now and to think that they were there. It was a crazy day. I remember waking up that morning and turning on the news. I worked nights at the time, and so.
And you were in New York City or in DC?
No, I was here. I was here, and I worked at Fox 5. And I guess I flipped on the TV and I see a tower on fire, and I was like, "What?" And you started trying to process it. And I remember I was actually watching the Today Show. Matt Lauer is trying to sort of talk live on the air. What are we looking at? Because they thought a Cessna may have grazed a building or something. It became very minor, but as you saw it, and it got worse and worse. And then I saw the actual second one hit live on TV. I was watching.
You were watching.
And right then you knew. And I remember seeing the first one collapse. And Matt Lauer was like, yeah, I think there's something going on, but he could tell he couldn't sort of like grasp it. And I'm looking like, no, it just disappeared. It fell to the ground. I was like, wow. It's just unbelievable to look at that and remember it. And my grandfather had passed away probably like 8-9 months before 9/11. And my grandmother was still alive. She was still living. They lived in the same apartment for 70-some years.
Really? In New York?
Yep.
In
4-story walk up. Yep. Right.
Wow.
Pretty close to where this all happened. And, so I called her. I tried, and you couldn't get phone, anything. It just was all busy signal. And finally, for some reason, I decided to pull out my cell phone because I think I was calling on like a hard line. And sure enough, it went right through. Got my grandma on the phone, and I remember her telling me she was looking out the window and she could see the smoke coming down the street. And I was trying to explain to her, close your windows. You know, it's an old apartment building. She had like a little air conditioner. I was like, if you have to use the air conditioner, but you may have to shut it off because you don't want that coming in the house. And I explained to her to like open up her front door to the hallway if she needed air, but I was like, you should really close your windows. And she seemed to handle it, but you know, I felt being so far away from her, and she's alone in the apartment. I was like, oh, it was hard. But my uncle, he's a lifelong firefighter, his whole life. He was part of all of this. He was
part of the New York Fire Department.
Yeah, and he was way up there. By the time this happened, in his career, he was a captain and stuff. He was now a battalion chief, so he was in charge of like 6 or 7 different firehouses in the area. And he dealt with the cleanup. He was there that day.
He was called. He was in his station.
Well, he's the one that puts his guys out there. So he's in charge of getting them in the building, out of the building, all that. And
what did you do when you saw things happen from here? Did you immediately call him? You probably couldn't because he's busy.
I got my grandmother.
You got your grandma.
And talked to her, and then actually I realized I should probably go to work. I mean, I was supposed to be in at 3.
Because you were nighttime.
Yeah. I remember coming in here at like 11:15 in the morning, and they didn't even think twice. They're like, you're going out the door.
Wow. Well, the local angle of this, of course, was Pentagon. So when you heard, you saw all that happen in the morning, and then Pentagon happened shortly thereafter, right?
Yeah, not too long after.
And so you're seeing that.
And I realized I probably should get to work. I mean, this
is
obviously a huge day. Yeah. And
you came in early.
Oh yeah, I just came in. I didn't even call the station to say I'm coming in. I just showed up, and they were looking for people, and so they immediately grabbed me, and they actually gave me gear, and it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. We didn't have any cars. All our live trucks, our crew cars were already out. So they said, get on the metro and get downtown, which in a terrorism situation is probably not the thing. But that's what I did. I literally took my gear on the metro because that was the only way I could get through the city.
So you did, okay, so that's funny because you're not used to that.
And I ended up at the Capitol because they were concerned that the Capitol was going to get hit.
That's right.
And
what was the sense here then? I wasn't in DC for this.
The crazy thing was to see people just on foot, just walking. They're walking across bridges. Some people walked like 15 miles home that day because they're just, you couldn't, you know, I think they may have even tried to close Metro at one point because they were concerned with what could happen next.
Yeah,
you know,
that makes sense.
And they were, I mean, F-14s or F-17s. I don't know what they were.
Yeah.
But fighter jets were flying all over the city.
And
at
you're
low.
And you were tasked, obviously, with covering this. So are you getting shots of all this as you see it?
Yeah, and I remember it just being like, it became like a war zone to see like helicopters and fighter jets flying all over the place. And then I finally got into a live truck at the Capitol, and they said, you need to go to the Pentagon. And I remember trying to drive
So you're
there.
all over. You're just...
And while you're driving down 395, I mean, traffic was pretty bad, but then you see like people like walking in the median because they're like, I couldn't get a bus.
Screw
Like,
it.
they were
Yeah.
just going to walk. So they're walking down the side of the highway trying to get home. And it was eerie because it was so quiet. So quiet.
In the city.
Yeah, like even with all the traffic, I remember no one was blowing horns. It was
amazing. So just so you know, guys, you're still looking at sort of this continued coverage all day in New York City as they read the names out. There's some up close pictures of these commemorated names of the victims, the more than 3,000 who lost their lives on 9/11. That's a beautiful shot there with the memorial there. But we're with Joe Spivak here in the newsroom, who has a pretty direct connection to all this because you have relatives that were involved in it, and not only involved in it, part of the fire department in New York.
Yeah, my like I said, my uncle was in the fire department. I ended up going to the Pentagon. I ended up, I think, meeting up with Bob Barnard, and we were live at
Bob's
the Pentagon.
in here today. We're going to chat with him as well.
And he'll probably remember. And I remember at some point, you just forget where you are in the day. At some point, things sort of calmed down, and it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I literally had to pull out my phone and be like, what time is it? I don't even know what time it is. It's dark. It was like 4 in the morning, and I realized, I don't know, my uncle's alive. And then his son became a New York City police officer, and he was down there. And I was like, I haven't even had time because I'm working.
In the thick of it in New York.
Yeah, because a lot of them, what ended up with my cousin is we couldn't find him for like 3 days. And a lot of police officers, when this happened, just like with me coming in here, they just went to the action. So they didn't do like a roll call. So sometimes, you know, captains and stuff sort of lost track of officers because they all rushed to a certain location to try to help.
So ultimately, did you get in touch with uncle and cousin?
Yes.
Or how did it later? I mean,
I got a hold of my uncle. Actually, I called my grandmother to check on her, and my uncle was there. So I got to talk to him on the phone because he said, I'm checking on grandma. I just want to see how she's doing. It was like 4 or 5 days after 9/11 had happened. And so he just happened to be in the city, and with all the chaos, he happened to real quick go over, because he was very busy, to check on grandma.
so you really didn't
She was
even
in her
get,
80s.
and you're going crazy covering it down here, but you didn't really get to see or talk to him until 4 days later.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was pretty crazy. I could tell he was spent. I could tell he was way tired and just overwhelmed with.
And his
the
son was
devastation.
okay? I mean,
yeah, we found out that he was okay. Like I said, he just didn't go through roll call, but he was same thing. He was. He actually, I think they put him up in like hotels or something in the city to keep them around to cover everything.
And so many first responders lost their lives too. So what a scary time that must have been for
I know
you guys.
My uncle, who was, like I said, a battalion chief in the fire department, I think he went to something like over 150 funerals.
Oh my goodness.
And he helped with the cleanup, and then he finally retired. I think it took a definite toll to have to, you know, go through that many funerals. It just one after another and for because some people didn't have funerals for like a year or so, you know. So he was going to funerals all the time, it seemed like, and was still involved in the cleanup, because the cleanup went for like a year and a half that they were down there, so.
And then just seeing sort of down here at Fox 5, that's interesting. What sort of became of that? I mean, you guys just went crazy covering it for days, and obviously Pentagon stuff
like
came
I said,
out.
I think my first day, I may have worked almost like 36, 40 hours straight. Like you just forgot. It was just nonstop coverage, and you just forgot what day it was. At some point, you try to take a moment to breathe, and you're like, I don't even know what day it is. I know I've been working a long time. It's night, it's day. And it's just like, and at the Pentagon, I remember it sort of calmed down.
Yeah.
And then the Pentagon caught fire again. Like all the fuel.
Right.
And it really lit up again. And so it went from.
It was evacuated. It was already evacuated.
Yeah, to a big event again. And I remember.
Right.
So literally, you're thinking everything's calming down, and then it caught fire again, and like, we're back at it. And then 6 hours goes by, and you're like, I don't know what day of the week it is.
And now there's a lot of tight security involved. I was lucky enough to see that place of impact to the Pentagon years ago with some program that I was doing. But it's really stunning to just see it. You kind of walk down this hidden hallway. I mean, it's a really kind of eerie and very overwhelming kind of area to see. But it's amazing that you were there covering it that day.
Yeah, and like I said, luckily both my uncle and my cousin were okay. They obviously had a lot of work ahead in helping the city sort of recover. And then at the Pentagon, the cleanup there was pretty massive. And like I said, I was with Bob. I don't know how long we were there. And then for weeks and months, we were there covering the Pentagon and the cleanup. And I think actually, like a year later, we did like a whole special at the Pentagon as they were,
You did, Fox did.
Yeah, I think it was Will Thomas was in it, and I was there, and like engineers sort of walked us through in hard hats how they're going to rebuild the Pentagon.
Oh, really?
It was pretty interesting to see how they were going to rebuild. And the Pentagon is just such a huge, thick building. So to see that happen,
I know.
It's just unbelievable, the impact to see a plane do that.
And now, obviously, so much more security in place there and more tight. But it already was. It was built for,
for that impact.
Impact war.
I just can't believe it's been 16 years. It just seems.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Even for me too, because I was a teen and I was in high school, but I remember it so well. I'll never forget all the details of that day.
How did your school handle it?
I was in Providence, Rhode Island, and we stopped in the middle of class. We did it. I was in Catholic school. We did some prayers over the intercom. Some schools were interesting, right? Every public and private, whether they would show the coverage for the rest of the day or not show it and continue on with the day. We were alerted about what happened. We saw that there was some franticness with people who had connections with sons or daughters that worked in the World Trade. And then we did go on about our day. We didn't get anything canceled, but I remember everything was just very somber. We went on with it. It was kind of a big question mark for a lot of people. And then we went home and it was just a really sad day. And I just watched news all night, obviously being a news junkie and a news lover. I remember putting in cassette tapes, taping some of the news, the old anchors. And I think to still find that footage would be amazing. And it's so historical and obviously very tragic to watch back. But my mom was home. She was watching the Today Show. Yep. She saw everything happen live just like you did. But people that woke up, flipped it on. And it's interesting, too, the East Coast versus West Coast. Most people in the East Coast were up and ready and had it on, but West Coast, obviously, earlier. Yep. So they a lot of them slept through that.
Yeah.
And camera still here in New York City on this memorial. And we'll probably have this all day. We have footage of Vice President Pence in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and President Trump also his first September 11th in office, making a speech at the Pentagon. So we have footage of that to bring to you guys later as well. But we're going to definitely talk to some people in the newsroom as much as we can. Yes. I know you said Bob, you were with Bob.
Yeah, and I remember at one point, it was probably a couple days after the fact, but where we were, it is now, I think they're making a memorial of it.
Really?
But it's a field right outside where the actual impact was. And
in the Pentagon?
Yeah. So across the highway, which is I don't know what it's 110, I think is what it is. But right across the highway, a lot of media started camping out with the Pentagon in the background. But our angle was so weird that I got a ladder and I put Bob on a ladder.
Yeah, this story is crazy.
And if you ever go to the museum, there's a whole section on 9/11, and an AP photographer took a picture of Bob reporting sitting on this ladder. It's like an 8-foot painter's ladder, but it was all we could do at the time. Now, days later, I told the station, I was like, we should rent a scissor lift, which is, you see guys painting and doing different type of drywall work.
The thing that lifts you up with
it's a big sort of rectangle and it scissors up. So we rented one of those, and I literally put the camera on one side and then the talent could be on the other side, and that's how. And then we could raise it to whatever height we needed it to have the shot of the impact zone.
Did you get your request?
Yeah, they got it, and it was there for like a month or two because we were there every day. Every day it seemed like for a long time.
So the story is there was something that you needed to get, and Bob needs to be above it.
Yeah, because just when you talk about angles, from where the impact was, we couldn't get a decent. Yeah, you couldn't see it. So I put Bob on this ladder.
He stood on it. Or he sat on it.
And he's game for anything.
No, he totally is. We'll talk to him in a second.
Wait till he comes here.
I know.
He's a handful.
He is.
I love him.
And so you were paired with him that day, and you go out with him fairly often too.
I did a lot.
And it'll be interesting to get his sort of experience on that. So then that photo becomes sort of iconic in the museum. Is it in the 9/11 section?
Yeah, it's in the 9/11 section because I guess it just shows the different reaches that people went to try to cover it.
Right.
I guess he's up on a ladder.
So it does show a little bit of
exactly.
artistic leeway there in covering it. But another shot here, I guess we just lost that one, but this is still New York City there. And we're here in studio with Joe Svidak, one of our photogs, who is willing to talk about his experience on that day.
You're losing ratings.
And it was,
There's a reason why I'm behind the camera.
We're having a little issue with our Wirecast today, guys, but if you're able to join us here on Facebook or YouTube, thanks for joining. As we sort of talk about 9/11 16 years later.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
It is. I mean, and then to see this, the final product, and I know they planned this memorial in the building for so long to actually right here.
Oh, this one, yeah.
I mean,
which I haven't yet seen myself, and I really do want to go in there
But I just remember the silence for days, even like in New York City. You know, I grew up there. You hear horns honking, and people just stopped. There was, and here too, traffic. No one honked. It was weird. Everyone sort of became friendly. There was no.
I remember
it was
that
just a
vibe.
weird vibe of not yelling at people. And
of course.
I guess you know when you see something like this, that's why they say never forget. It puts into perspective.
It does. And we see this kind of sort of fallout or reaction from other, unfortunately, big tragic events that we go through as Americans. So
it was definitely a crazy day and a crazy sort of like week. I mean, and then it was weird. Sometimes I'd work like 30 hours straight, and I'd come home and, like you said, I'd turn on the news. It was on all the time, and I would, instead of go to bed, I'd watch.
I know.
And I was like, at some point, I gotta like shut it off.
I am so fascinated to hear all this, and I'm excited to hear from everybody because I wasn't in the news business during this, and to be in that during this, which was just obviously just a monumental moment in news, really, is so interesting to hear. I was so much more before that world for me, but it's so interesting to hear that you were here for it.
Yeah, and to hear sort of the silence, and then like I said, it just became a war zone with all sorts of aircraft and they're flying over at low altitude.
Security things.
Yeah, it was always because they were trying to redirect planes, and then every now and then they'd say like there may be another plane coming, and so they went into action, the military, and then even like ground zero. I mean, you're seeing tanks, guys with rifles. We see a lot of security here in D.C., but to see military coming out in force, it's like, wow, we're under attack, and you just never thought you could even, there's so many parts of this world that are attacked by stuff.
Right.
To realize that you're now at ground zero, people are attacking us. It was, people were terrified. You could see them fleeing, running. Like I said, people walked for days because they couldn't get a train or anything. So they just walked. They decided we're just going to do what we can to get out of the city.
So Metro pretty much shut down for a bit?
I
don't
remember.
remember.
I remember riding it in, but I think outbound, people trying to leave to get out of the city. I think it was. I don't know if it may have temporarily shut down, but I think also so many people were trying to get on the Metro that some people, since we're sort of under attack, like instead of sitting here waiting for a train for 2 hours, I'd rather just start walking, and people just start walking. And right out here, we're on Wisconsin Avenue, and I remember seeing just droves of people. It was a parking lot of cars, all trying to get out of the city toward Bethesda and out toward Montgomery County, and people just walking. And you knew that they probably took the train into work, and now they're like, we're just gonna walk.
Yeah.
And just walk for miles.
Right. Awesome account, Joe Spivak. Really, really cool to see from you. We're gonna kind of jump around the newsroom and have other anchors and reporters come share their experience, and I think Allison's coming up next. Yay! So we'll switch out the mic. Hey, Allison.
Let me do it.
Yeah, just a little casual conversation. We got our one bump shot right now, and we'll play out for you later the ceremony at Shanksville, which I thought was really interesting.
All right, Miss Allison.
Is that your phone?
No. Oh, it may be actually this one.
Hi.
Have fun. Here you
Thanks,
go.
Joe. Great account. Crazy.
Are we on still right now?
We're on. You're gonna roll in.
Just like
just here.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So Allison's gonna join us now. I'm so intrigued just to talk to all these personalities in the newsroom that were here on 9/11, 16 years ago. And we have a shot right now of Oculus, the World Trade Memorial. Right now, we had some pictures of the ceremony in Shanksville before, but tell us about your day that day.
Oh my goodness.
You were here.
I was here. So I was pregnant with my second child.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like big and pregnant. And
wow.
I was the health reporter. And so I used to anchor the noon show, and I was the health reporter. And so we were in the car, and we were going to a story. And we were listening to the radio, and when the first plane hit. And my photographer and I were like, it's weird, We thought it was like a small plane, got lost, flew into the first tower. And we started driving along, we were going, and we got maybe 2 miles away from the station, and then the second plane hit. And we're like, oh, okay.
You knew it was something, because
Yeah.
you were on the way
I was on the way to a story.
A story.
And I was like, all right, something very bad is going on. And so the emotions of being pregnant and the uncertainty. So we get back here, and then at around 9 something is when the Pentagon hit. And I honestly felt like this is it. Like, it's World War III. We had no idea. I remember my news director was like, what is 9/11? Is that an emergency? We were all like working the computers, just trying to figure out, making sense of it. Anchors Lark McCarthy and Michael Gargiulo were on the air because they just stayed on the air, and we would stay on continuously. It was just like no other time. It was like no commercials, all you know. And I remember because I was pregnant, they didn't send me out that day. I came back working the phones, just trying to figure out whatever. And then I would do the midnight to like 8 o'clock shift because we needed someone here all the time.
Really? So you were pregnant doing that? I was
pregnant and came back in because they wanted to be able to go on the air at any time.
Bringing in their feeds from New York and everything.
Everything like that. So it was just like, who is doing this? Because I feel like before that, we were just so insulated, like war happened in foreign lands. And that's not something that we dealt with, you know, since our Civil War, and what are we living through? And it was a sense of instability, which is horrible. Like you're at home, everything, it felt like you weren't safe anymore. And so it was a big wake-up call, and I had a small child at the time already. And thankfully, Sydney was with my parents in Williamsburg that day, and my husband is a radio host, so he was on the air all day. It was just, it was surreal. And then you started figuring out, oh, this is who did this. And so I remember we had meetings about different terms that we should know now, and you know, and different terror groups and networks. And it was just, it's weird because I know that some people don't know anything about it or don't remember, and that's a blessing, and it's a curse too, because we should never forget. But it feels good to have a little bit of distance between that day, because I just remember thinking nothing is ever going to be the same again, and it's not. But it doesn't feel like I have to look around because maybe there might be a plane that's going to crash into another building.
Is that such a real surreal feeling that day?
Very
because
much so.
Pentagon is so close. And that's, I mean, it's not like New York's still close and scary, but Pentagon right here, you guys had, I mean, Joe said he was sent out there, photog. It's so close to home.
Just, I remember that Kenny Martin, who runs our desk, he stood up at one point after the Pentagon, he said, is somebody protecting us? Like, because then you start to think, I mean, you know, what's going to happen now? And so that's just the level of.
He stood up and said that.
Horrible.
I don't doubt that, because I remember that feeling.
It was hard. Like, what are they going to attack schools? Or what
Churches,
is going to happen?
Big
Churches,
buildings,
exactly.
anything.
The media, you know.
The media.
And that is, though, when we had police officers for the first time. At the front door, they put up those concrete barriers that you see now at the front entrance of Fox 5, and it was like, okay, the innocence is over now. But in reality, that's how other countries live all the time. And so I don't have that narrow viewpoint that we should be so special that we're not like in the middle of this sort of unrest or uncertainty. I'm very aware of the global perspective, but I mean, America was like safe. It was safe, but it wasn't after that.
How was it having a small child for that too? I mean, you were pregnant, obviously, but even
I was pregnant,
teaching your, I mean,
well, for a long time, I didn't tell her what it was about. My oldest, Sydney, was little, because my girls are 14 months apart, so it was
really little.
They were really little, and so by the time that she started going to elementary school and stuff, and they didn't really necessarily teach it. But then right around this time too, it's like, hey, mommy, I saw this on TV, or what is this?
Really?
And so it's at that point that you have to say, this happened, and it is scary. But then here's the question: can you promise? I mean, will it happen again? I don't know.
I know. How do you make them feel okay?
How do you make them feel okay? And all I can say is just that, like, I'm going to do what I can to keep you safe, and you just have to live every day in a kind way, in a compassionate way, because none of us knows.
So hard having little kids. How did it change sort of like the news media business here?
My goodness.
I mean, was that nuts to be here? I wasn't in DC at the time, so it's just fascinating to.
It was, well, all of us, we just threw everything out. It just became news in its purest form. because we were on continuously to give people information, and you were hungry for the information because you're just trying to make sense of something. So, you know, but for us personally, it was hard because our anchor man at the time in the morning, he's from New York, and there was a moment where he began to cry.
Really?
And he said, "This happened in my home. They did this in my home." Because for us here in DC, it was like, oh no, it's New York City. You know, we love New York. We go for the weekend, we come back home. But he was from there. And he was worried on different levels. Like, I'm sure Tony will tell you this story, but Tony was living in New York and, you know, trying to, and I think his wife had come up for the weekend or something, and so he couldn't get in touch with her. I mean, so it's
there were personal things.
Right, it's personal. So you're reporting 24 hours a day, but still, it's like, what about, am I really safe? And so it was like a time where you had to, when you were at work, you had to be at work. You had to give that information, and then when you went home, you had to try to make sense of it, or you were probably watching.
Yeah, that's what Joe even said. He was like, I couldn't take my eyes off of it.
And then subsequently, when we went to war, especially like in Iraq, we're watching like we were just watching everything because you just wanted to feel like you were safe again, you know. And so in the years since, honestly, like if something like that happened again, would I be totally shocked? No. Because it's already happened, you know, that innocence was taken away. But there has been peace in the years since, as far as in my soul, I mean, like, I don't, like I said, I don't look don't look up when I see a plane. But back then it was like a plane, what is that plane doing?
Right.
Because there was no air travel for a while. And then when you see a plane, what's that plane doing? Now at least I can look up and be like, oh, that plane's going somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, people saved up to go to a vacation, or it's not that same really nervous feeling. But it's always in the back of your mind.
Absolutely. Did you stop doing health stuff for a while and go to that? They pushed you to.
We stopped everything.
Everything was 9/11.
Everything. And like I remember the image for me was when the first plane that left Reagan National and the pilot like giving a thumbs up.
Oh,
and then you're like, you know,
it's emotional.
We're back, but it's so
that is an amazing image.
Yeah, and it's just like we're back and we're doing something as routine as flying again.
I know.
You know what I mean? And so, but yeah, I guess after that, I eventually went back to health. And then my position morphed a little bit here, and I was doing some other stuff. But
and now you see her in the morning.
And now I'm in the morning,
which is great. So we'll have Alton on here and there to chat about topics. Yay. You're so good at it.
This is so fun.
It's neat. Yeah, it's cool to hear from the people in this newsroom about that day.
Right,
it's really an emotional day, even for me to remember it and to talk to you guys with your firsthand accounts of how things changed here, what DC, what the vibe was like. Joe telling us that people dropped everything, came together, as we always do during tragedies.
Most definitely, and that felt good. You know, that felt good, and it felt like we were a little more tolerant. It felt like we were more inclusive because we were all Americans. And you know, as corny as that sounds, but it was a good feeling.
Wow,
it was a really good feeling. So, and I even remember like President Bush when he stood up on, I don't even know what it was. Was he on a truck?
Yeah.
I don't even know. And he had that megaphone, and you know, and I'm like, yes, you know,
I know,
we're gonna be okay.
What a time.
And
is there anything that compares to that now? I mean, we've been through now 16 years.
Well, so like right after that, was that like a year later when the DC snipers?
Oh yeah, that was, it's close by.
It was weird.
A few years later, a couple years later.
And so now all of a sudden we were back on
alert mode.
Back in alert mode, but nothing will ever be like that. Even with the, you know, the little terror incidents that have happened, like with the shoe bomber trying to get on board. It just nothing is like that day, you know, and may nothing ever be like that day again.
Absolutely. You guys are looking at that live shot there in New York City, the memorial. We'll have continued sort of feeds coming in of people commemorating this day. Yeah. Thanks so much, Alton.
Molly, you do a wonderful job.
Oh, thanks.
You do, so keep it up.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see Alton again soon.
Oh, I guess you want your mic back?
Yeah, you can drop it on the chair.
I literally did just drop it. Sorry. Okay.
Thanks, Al. Have a good
Okay,
day.
you got it.
So we're going to be in and out, guys, with people coming around from the newsroom. But for now, take a look at this shot, and we'll bring you some video from earlier this morning in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The Vice President was there to commemorate this day 16 years ago, where Flight 93 went down. If we have other things breaking or other people coming by, we'll have them join us here on the stream. So thanks for watching here on Facebook and YouTube, guys.
Rural southwestern Pennsylvania to pay their respects and to remember those 40 heroes that represent us all. Husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, children, grandparents, uncles, aunts, siblings, friends, and neighbors. It could have been you. It could have been me. Our loved ones never gave up. And neither should we, the people. We must remember that by standing together as individuals, just as our loved ones did, we become stronger, more focused on our objectives, less likely to be driven by depersonalized ideology, and more likely to do what is right in the face of evil and uncertainty. Let us all pledge to remember this day, our heroes, and their collective actions throughout the year. September 11th must continue to be more than just a day in history, but rather a call to action, a call to our conscience, so that we never forget who we are and who we aspire to be. Thank you.
Spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all Leave the rest behind, it'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice. A song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
Thank you, Gordy, and to all of you, Celtic Air. It was beautiful. Thank you. Ryan Zinke was sworn in as the 52nd Secretary of the Interior in March of this year. A fifth-generation Montanan and former United States Navy SEAL commander, Secretary Zinke has championed sportsman access, conservation, forest management, responsible energy development, and smart management of federal lands. Growing up in a logging and rail town near Glacier National Park, he has had a lifelong appreciation for conserving America's natural beauty and public spaces. Secretary Zinke enlisted in the Navy in 1985 and was soon selected to join the elite force, where he would build an honorable career until his retirement in 2008. He retired with the rank of commander after leading SEAL operations across the globe, including several as the deputy and acting commander of Joint Special Forces in Iraq and 2 tours at SEAL Team 6. He was the first Navy SEAL elected to the United States House of Representatives and is the first SEAL to serve as a cabinet secretary. Secretary Zinke leads an agency with more than 70,000 employees who are the stewards for 20% of our nation's lands, including wildlife refuges, public lands, national parks, monuments, national memorials, such as this one. Please welcome the United States Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke.
Well, thanks, Mike. And what a beautiful day, as it was that fateful morning. We all remember 9/11 somewhat differently. For me, I was a SEAL instructor in Coronado. On that fateful morning, I knew that our country would be forever changed. Now, as I was with the cabinet members on Saturday, looking at Hurricane Irma and planning the recovery of Harvey and looking at the forest fires in the West, the Vice President and I had a conversation about his experience as he was standing on the steps of our nation's capital. And so the heroism and courage of the 40 passengers and crew is special because it was their actions that protected our nation. I have fought in a lot of battles in my life, and truly their fight was worth fighting for. I'm grateful for this Vice President because he has continued the fight against evil. His family has continued the fight against evil. As his son is a first Marine or a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps, trained to be a pilot. His father, who fought in Korea as a second lieutenant in the United States Army, earned a Bronze Star. And I'm convinced that it was from his father that the Vice President learned that not only must you fight, but you must win. So this morning, it is my high honor to introduce a man that I've gotten to know as a great man of conviction, of character, of faith, a man who loves his country, loves the people that are in it, and also understands that evil cannot win, evil cannot break the spirit of our great nation. And so with that, it is my high honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States of America, Mike Pence.
Governor Wolf, Secretary Zinke, Congressman Schuster, Congressman Rothfuss, Superintendent Clark, distinguished guests, but most of all, family members of the heroes who perished in this very field. Reverend Britton, Gordy Felt, and all of those who join us and look on today. We are deeply humbled to join you on this most solemn of days at this Flight 93 Memorial Annual Remembrance Ceremony at this common field one day that became a field of honor forever. President Trump asked me to be here to pay a debt of honor to the 40 heroes of Flight 93, to all the fallen and their families, and to the generation of heroes they inspired, and to tell you that his heart is here in Pennsylvania, especially with all of you who lost loved ones 16 years ago. Our president observed this day of remembrance at the Pentagon Memorial, where moments ago he paid tribute to the 184 men and women who lost their lives there. All of our hearts as well are with the families of the 2,753 men and women, their families, who lost their lives at the World Trade Center in New York City. As the President said just moments ago, we grieve with every family of the innocent souls who were murdered by terrorists that day. And we will never forget what happened on September 11th, 2001. Today we pause as a nation not so much to remember tragedy as to celebrate heroism and patriotism. But permit me to say that on this day, as Gordy said before, our hearts and our prayers are also with our fellow Americans in Florida and throughout the region who suffered loss in the winds and waters of Hurricane Irma. At this very hour, first responders and new citizen heroes are being forged among the people of Florida. And as the President has said, I say again, to those affected by Hurricane Irma, we are with you. We will stay with you, and we will be with you every day after this tempest passes to restore, recover, and rebuild. Everyone remembers where they were on this day 16 years ago. A mom rousing her children to get ready for school. A farmer wrapping up the morning chores. A coal miner finishing the third shift and heading home. As a new member of Congress, I was going through my normal workday routine at the United States Capitol when I learned of the attacks in New York City and at the Pentagon. I will always remember the scenes of that day, watching the Capitol complex being evacuated. It was as though the building was literally hemorrhaging with people running in every direction. I found myself just across the street from the U.S. Capitol eventually, on the top floor of the headquarters of the Capitol Police Chief. I was there with leaders of the House and Senate. Shortly after I arrived, the Chief of Police set the phone back down and informed the leaders gathered there that there was a plane inbound to the Capitol, and he said it was 12 minutes out. In that moment, the room became silent. And as people began to make plans, I found myself looking out the window, where just across the street was the Capitol Dome, with that majestic Statue of Freedom standing atop it. A dome that's a symbol of the ideals of this nation, of freedom and democracy for all the world. So we waited. It was the longest 12 minutes of my life. But it turned to 13 minutes, then 14. And then we were informed that the plane had gone down in a field in Pennsylvania. In the days ahead, like every American, we would learn the story of the 40 heroes of Flight 93, men and women who looked evil squarely in the eye, and without regard to their personal safety, they rushed forward to save lives. They were mothers and fathers, your brothers and sisters, sons and daughters from every walk of life, of every background. Mark Bingham was on his way to be an usher in his college friend's wedding. Cece Lyles was living her childhood dream to be a flight attendant in the wake of a career in law enforcement. Lauren Grancolas carried the spark of life within her, an unborn child, 3 months along. And Bill Cashman, himself a former Army paratrooper with the 101st Airborne, had actually helped to build the World Trade Center with his own two hands. And there were so many others whose names we just heard echo into the wind this morning. They were ordinary people, but on that day they became extraordinary. We all know the story. Flight 93 took off at 8:42, departing Newark to San Francisco, when 46 minutes later, terrorists seized control. At 9:35, the plane diverted toward Washington, D.C. The passengers called their loved ones, only to find out what was happening across the country. They learned what the rest of America knew. The World Trade Center had been struck. The Pentagon had been hit only a few moments after they were hijacked. They figured out that the terrorists intended to use their plane for the same purpose. But as Tom Burnett told his wife on the phone, we're going to do something. And they did. The men and women of Flight 93 began to join together. They devised a plan in those short moments. They knew their objective. They not only planned, but history records that they prayed. Together with Lisa Jefferson, a phone operator on the ground below, we're told they prayed the Lord's Prayer. and recited those ancient words. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. At 9:57, after only 29 minutes, Todd Beamer spoke those words that America and the world will never forget. Let's roll. They charged the cockpit. They took hold of their fate. And 6 minutes later, at 10:03, Flight 93 plummeted here to the earth. Brave men and women aboard sacrificed their lives for the country we call home. We gather here today because the men and women of Flight 93 are heroes. And this beautiful memorial stands as a testament to the American people's undying reverence for their service and sacrifice. Each of their 40 names are etched into this marble. They're carved into the memory of the American people as well, even as they're seared into the hearts of you that were left behind. The Bible tells us that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and to the families of the fallen here, that'll be our prayer for you today. You honor us by your presence. And as the President said this morning, you honor our heroes. You renew our courage, and you strengthen us all. Today, as a nation, we mourn with you. We remember with you. And we look forward to the day when we will hear the chimes in this place, in the Tower of Voices. We'll turn the whisper of the wind into a heroic call to action. It will remember them and echo across this field and across America for generations to come. At 93 feet, that Tower of Voices that'll be completed by this time next year will honor the heroes of Flight 93, and that soaring structure will hold those 40 chimes, each with a different musical note to symbolize the voices of the 40 men and women we remember today. The notes, when played together, I'm told, will form a perfect harmony. Just as in their final moments, the men and women of Flight 93 worked together to defend freedom. The American people will forever be inspired by their courage and resolve. We honor them by remembering them. And we honor them by ensuring that we do all in our power as a nation to prevent such evil from ever reaching our shores again. As President Trump has reminded us, we are President has reminded us we are in the midst of a war between good and evil. The first battle in that war took place in the skies above us and ended in this grassy meadow. We cannot hallow this place beyond what the heroes of Flight 93 have already done. When the plane went down, the heroes aboard it were the first of a new generation of Americans to rise up as citizen soldiers in what would come to be known as the global war on terror. It is remarkable to think that in the wake of their service and sacrifice, America itself experienced a rebirth of unity, of purpose, and a rededication to our most sacred ideal of freedom. And every day for 16 years, their actions have inspired many more of our fellow citizens to stand up, to step forward, and to follow in their heroic service. The President said today, America cannot be intimidated, and in the aftermath of September 11th, we've seen tens of thousands of Americans step forward to serve their communities and protect our families and defend our freedom. They've donned the uniform of first responders, firefighters, police officers, and more than 5 million Americans have stepped forward to serve in the armed forces of the United States of America since September 11th. These men and women turned what was a day of tragedy into a triumph of freedom as our nation rallied together and charged forward to meet the enemy on our terms, on their soil. And we will always cherish the memory of the nearly 7,000 Americans who have given their lives on the field of battle since that day 16 years ago today. Like the heroes of Flight 93, we will never forget their service, their sacrifice, or the families they left behind. But we must remind ourselves on this solemn day of remembrance that the threat remains. And even now, the menace of global terrorism brings violence across the wider world to places like London and Paris and Barcelona. In Iraq and Syria, the barbarians known as ISIS continue to plot attacks against America, against our allies and all who cherish freedom. But under the leadership of President Donald Trump as our commander-in-chief, our armed forces have ISIS on the run in Iraq and Syria, and we will not rest or relent until we hunt down and destroy them at their source. And we also do well to remember that the perpetrators of 9/11 organized and orchestrated their attacks from a safe haven of Afghanistan. And just a few short weeks ago, President Trump renewed our commitment to see the fight in Afghanistan through to an honorable and enduring outcome that will be worthy of the tremendous sacrifices that have been made. Some 4 weeks ago, President Trump expressed the full commitment of the United States to, in his words, destroy terrorist organizations and the radical ideology that drives them. And so we will. America will remain engaged in Afghanistan until we eliminate the terrorist threat to our homeland and our people once and for all. We've made great gains. Our resolve is stronger than ever. And I promise you, together as one nation and one people, we will drive the cancer of terrorism from the face of the earth. We fight because our families deserve to live in safety and security. We fight because our fallen heroes demand justice. And so long as we have strength, we will honor their memories and do right by the people and the nation they died to defend. So I'm here on behalf of our president and all the American people to pay a debt of honor. A debt of honor to the heroes of Flight 93. A debt of honor to a generation of heroes that followed their inspiring example in and out of uniform, at home and abroad. But I'm also here to pay a debt of gratitude to the heroes of Flight 93 on a much more personal basis. For their actions on that day in these skies saved American lives. And as my wife Karen, who joins me here today, knows, it's a debt I don't think I'll ever be able to repay. Because among the many lives that were saved by their selfless courage, they might well have saved my own life that day, 16 years ago. You know, this isn't our first time standing in this field here in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Not more than a year after that fateful day, Karen and I brought our 3 small children here to this hallowed ground on a drive back from Washington to Indiana. That day, we did not find this extraordinary memorial. We found only a makeshift memorial, no more than a plywood wall painted with the names of the fallen, a timeline, and a wooden cross out in the field. It was that day, with the help of a park ranger, that I learned personally of the sequence of events that day. I asked her if the U.S. Capitol was in fact the target, what time would the plane have reached the Capitol building? And what she told me, I'll never forget. For at the time, she said, standing with hundreds of others, I was standing near the east front of the House of Representatives. I will always believe that I and many others in our nation's capital were able to go home that day to hug our families because of the courage and selflessness of the heroes of Flight 93. So for me, it's personal. And I speak on behalf of a grateful nation. But thank you for giving me the privilege of speaking on behalf of my little family as well. When heroes fall, the nation mourns. For no greater love has a man than this, that he should lay down his life for his friends. To the families of the fallen, as President Trump promised this morning, I say now, the memory of your loved ones will never die. They will always be with us. Their heroic story in our minds, our hearts, enshrined in the memory of this country. As long as America endures, we will tell their story, and generations of Americans will ever be inspired by the faithful and courageous words and deeds of the heroes of Flight 93. May God bless our beloved fallen. May God bless and comfort the families gathered here and all those who suffered loss on this day 16 years ago. And may God continue to bless the United States of America.
There are no words, there is no song. Is there a bone that can heal these wounds?
So guys, that was Shanksville, Pennsylvania earlier this morning, Vice President Pence. Now you're looking at a live shot of him leaving Shanksville there with Karen Pence. Very touching, emotional, personal speech from the Vice President at the site of Flight 93 where it went down. 16 years ago. In just a little bit, guys, we're going to hear from someone else in our newsroom, another reporter. We've had a lot of people kind of come by to talk about their experience on that day here at Fox 5 DC and just in general in Washington during that. So that is going to be coming up shortly next. So stay with us. All right, guys, we're back with Bob Barnard inside the newsroom, another person here who was here during 9/11, 2001, 16 years ago. Just kind of getting the various accounts. You're also looking at some shots of Shanksville, Pennsylvania this morning, where Vice President Pence was involved in a wreath-laying ceremony there just earlier this morning. So Bob, your story is quite amazing here. Tell me just about that day to start out, and we'll talk more.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was at the time working a night shift, so I was frankly at the gym on a treadmill with my then fiance, now wife, mother of our 2 kids, and all of a sudden we're looking up like, what's on the news? And so we plugged from music into the sound, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! And it was weird because people around us were saying, oh my God, what a terrible accident. And I'm from New York, and I know those the Twin Towers were wide, and I'm like, nobody just accidentally flies in. And I honestly thought it was a small plane, but I thought someone purposely flew in, and yet people are saying, oh my God, what a terrible accident in New York. I'm like, no, that's not an accident. You don't just fly into that thing. And then the second one hit, and we're like, oh my God. So she's a journalist too. We ran home, because I'm thinking, honest to God, I thought the White House is next.
Yeah. You weren't far off because the Capitol was targeted.
Yeah, and I'm thinking they're coming for the White House. So we ran back to our apartment, and there were 2 voicemails waiting for me saying, national emergency. It was the assignment desk, which was right here at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And they're saying, we need you, we're sending you to New York right away. So I packed a quick bag, and I had showered, packed a bag, called a cab. There was no Uber or anything, right? So I called a cab, and I figured I'm going to Union Station to try to get to New York. On the way to the train station, I get a call from my parents in New York telling me that a very good friend of our family worked at the time for Cantor Fitzgerald in the North Tower, 104th floor, and had heard from family members that he was there at work that morning, and it's not looking good. And then I told them what I was going to do, and my mother was like, well, you can't, the trains are stopped. There's no trains coming to New York. I said, gotta go. So I called the station. I said, hey, I can't get to New York. They said my family in New York saying Amtrak's not running, and they're like, yes, we're just learning that.
Okay,
we don't know what to do. So then I literally just took the cab downtown. I just told them I'm going to the White House. I just figured if they've hit 2 buildings, I didn't know, but it was weird. Let me get to the White House, and I literally left my suitcase in the cabbie and threw a 20 at him. I said, can you take it back to where you picked me up?
Oh, really?
Which he did. And
oh my goodness!
Started another probably a long 14-hour day. Which, as I was trying to get to the White House, they were pushing back the perimeter around the White House, Secret Service and other police. So we were close, and then we were pushed back. We finally got to Farragut North Metro Station, Connecticut and K. And my first reporting was on the chaos of Washington reacting to what was going on in New York. People were leaving work, freaking out, and there were police around, but it was funny. It was more commuters, business people that were directing traffic because it was snarled. People were trying to go every which way right there at Connecticut and K.
Wow.
So that's what we were reporting on, and learning that the metro's running, but people are driving and they're blocking streets, and people are trying to help. There were no police directing traffic, and then we hear, oh my God, they've hit the Pentagon.
Then it was Pentagon. Okay.
And so then we were like, we're going.
You got sent there.
So I was there until 2 in the morning, and we couldn't get super close. By that time, some of the early morning crews that were going right there, that were already on and ready, because early on I didn't have a photographer. I was just on my own, and I met up with a photographer there at Farragut North Metro Station.
That was Joe, I think, because we spoke to him earlier.
It was actually
no?
Don Watcher. Joe came later on. Yeah, Joe came that evening because he was on the night shift. So he came later on that. But this is 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So I went over with Don Watcher, one of our longtime photographers, and we got there to the Pentagon. And you were there for several days, but for the rest of that long day, and you could see what was going on. You just couldn't get that close. Yeah. Because by then, early on, some crews got right up close, but then they just kept pushing that perimeter back. Okay. Yeah. And you've done this so long, and as a journalist, you've been in these, scary situations with anything can happen. Was this one different? Was it unlike anything you've ever done, or is it another day? No. Well, you knew. I mean, I went to Oklahoma City after the bombing there. And so 95? Looking at the, yes, it was April 95. Yeah. I was working in Tampa at the Fox station in Tampa at the time, but we went from Tampa to Oklahoma City. And looking at the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, when I saw the Pentagon, it reminded me of that. Really? It's like, oh my God, this part of a building has just been, it was roughly the same kind of size. But knowing what was going on in New York, it was just blowing my mind away. I wasn't covering New York, I was here. But it was hard because your heart was there, you're from there. Yeah, and I knew someone, at least one. It turns out I knew a number of people from my hometown that were working that day and were killed in both towers. So it was weird because my hometown, New York, I'm from New York, both my parents are from New York, was demolished. Right. And yet I had the biggest thing I've probably covered personally since Oklahoma City. what was that, probably 6 years earlier.
Mm.
And so it was weird because we couldn't get close to like the real stuff at the Pentagon. We're, you know, maybe 3/4 of a mile away, but it was a tense time. But you're thinking about what's going on in New York, thinking, oh my God, what just happened? Those buildings are
right. Were you able, I mean, this is a hard question, were you able to separate that work day from going home and talking to your family?
I was, while I was working, absolutely. I was. And then I went to, there's a cool little crypt at Georgetown University that I know of. So at 2 in the morning, I got back here, got my, I didn't have a car, so I forget how I got there. Maybe I took a cab or whatever, but I went to Georgetown University, this little cave-like crypt, said a couple prayers, and then went home. Yeah, but throughout the day, I was able to kind of just cover what I had to cover, knowing what was going on in New York, but just, you got to, you know, do what you got to do.
Where are you from in New York? You're in?
Long Island.
Oh, you are, right.
Yeah, from Nassau County, Long Island, but you know, from a certain road in my hometown, you see the Empire State Building. So, and my dad worked, I had worked in New York City for NBC right out of college.
Oh, okay.
And so, I mean, my whole background is New York.
So there's a cool thing that happened at the Pentagon. Tell me a little about it. Joe was telling me how he had to get the right angle, so we put you up on this pedestal to get in front of it.
Yeah, well, when we got there, Dave Rizak was with one of our other longtime photographers, was with a live truck, but where all the media was gathering, it was at a gas station just west of the Pentagon. There was a big hill, so you couldn't see where they were. You could, but there was a street sign, 390. It was like basically a street sign with 395, and you're like, God, we're here. There's grass, like a hill here, and there's a sign blocking
the view of it.
What you need to see. But that's where everybody was. And if you look at a lot of the early shots, it's obstructed. So I went to the other side of the gas station. The hill there was much higher, but there was a ladder in the dumpster. So
oh my gosh!
I grabbed the
resourceful.
ladder. Took the ladder out of the dumpster, climbed up, and boom, you could see over the hill right to where it was. So we brought the live truck over.
Okay.
And Dave Rizak set up the live truck. Don Watrud got up on top of the truck with his camera, just on the little bit of a tripod. And I sat on top of this 8-foot ladder.
Really?
And Don Watrud shooting me sitting on the ladder, and beyond me to the Pentagon, you could see it. And we ended up doing that. Joe got in that night. I can't remember her name, but there was a reporter that came on and did the night and overnight, and I came back the next day. So we were there for like 2 days on the ladder, and then they had allowed us to park up the street a little bit, so it was a little further away, but it was higher, and you had a better angle to see into the Pentagon. But I think on that first day, our shot, because of that ladder and putting the camera on top of the live truck, was the best shot as they were working throughout the afternoon, evening, and overnight of an unobstructed view of the Pentagon.
That's so cool. And reporters and photographers, they were there as teams. They were doing anything they could really to get that shot, right? So
but most of them stayed down at the other end. They just I guess, were okay with the sign blocking part of the view. And I was like, I want to see. I don't want a sign in the way of what we're trying to show our viewers is happening here. So by being on top of the ladder, turns out that the ladder, honest to God, I thought they're throwing out the ladder. So I'm like,
because there's a dumpster.
Yeah, so I'll take this ladder, don't throw it away. Turns out they used the ladder to change the gas prices on the signs.
Oh, they needed it.
So they stored the ladder there.
Okay.
I just borrowed it for a few days.
And so you were able to use it for the few days.
Well, I took it. Nobody said otherwise.
And it was kind of an amazing sight, right? And there was an AP photographer nearby that was like, look at this. These journals are doing this thing.
No, you know
Is that what happened?
No, late night. It was like at midnight.
Oh.
She was actually a freelance photographer who apparently had worked for Al Gore's presidential campaign the year before.
Okay.
She was somewhere else and got there late, and it was dark, and she saw us on top of our truck, so she asked she asked me, because the camera was up, she said, hey, can I come up and take a picture from on top of your truck? I'm like, because she couldn't see either, because it was dark here. Where we were, you couldn't see unless you're on top. So I said, yeah, just don't shake the truck because we're on TV. So she got on top of the truck to take a picture of the Pentagon. I thought, well, one of the pictures actually was including me on the ladder and the Pentagon, and it ended up, it's now at the museum.
It ended up being a photo now on display in the 9/11 section of the museum, which is a big, prominent chunk section of the museum. And if you guys have ever been there, you've probably seen it. But I'm gonna have to go back and check it out. But that's amazing because it was sort of recounting that section, recounting all the coverage of 9/11 as well as what happened.
Yeah, in New York and all around the places. Yeah, and I got a call maybe a year or so later, someone saying, hey, I work for the museum, which was over in Arlington County at the time. We're putting together a book on covering 9/11, and we have this picture of you, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I described what it was. It came out in that book, and then they also put it in the museum.
Wow.
So, and
it's such a cool story.
yeah, I didn't know until it was
Later.
like media day, and someone came back and we're like, hey, we were just at the Pentagon. There's a picture of you. I mean, at the museum, there's a picture of you at the Pentagon in there. So it was kind of weird.
This story was sort of circulating around the newsroom this morning. So I was like, I got to get Bob in here to tell me firsthand.
So that was it.
Turns out I was wrong. I was a freelance photographer, but
Molly Bingham, who later on was kidnapped in Iraq during the Iraq War.
Really?
She was kidnapped and held prisoner for a period of time.
While covering
as a freelance journalist the war in Iraq. And so I read Molly Bingham like, oh
and
my
you
God.
remembered her.
Yeah, because my wife actually got a copy of it that she signed. And
cool.
Just as a copy at home.
How is she doing now? What is she?
I think she's fine. She's still a journalist, a photojournalist, and she was released and it's okay. But yeah, we just met briefly.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
Neat connection. And then sort of just, I was asking Allison this too, but just sort of how it changed the vibe of Washington. I wasn't in Washington at the time, but you obviously were and were covering it. How did things go that week and people coming together and just everything?
Yeah, I mean, it was eerie. I mean, because, no planes were flying for a while.
Right.
And so the Pentagon is right by Reagan National Airport. So often when you're in that area or anywhere downtown, you'll hear planes. I mean, if you're at Georgetown University, they fly right overhead. If you're at the Pentagon, they're right there. And so we spent about a week in the parking lot of this gas station closest to the Pentagon, and it was just quiet. Yeah, I mean, there were some cars on the roads, but nothing flying overhead. So that was weird. But like no planes in the sky.
And then when it does happen, it's
then
little, you're
initially,
scared.
Like, oh yeah, and it's like that. They hug the river to go into the airport.
Oh my goodness.
And that was the concern
they're
initially
low.
was, they're coming in.
They're still to
and
this
taking
day.
off, and so initially it was some concern. I think it was one of the last airports to reopen because what do we do? The flight path is right. If you veer off in an instant, you could be at the White House or at the Capitol.
Yeah.
But they eventually opened up. I mean, it was the TSA was created. There was
Right.
no TSA.
We forget about Homeland Security and all that.
I mean,
right.
I remember going.
It's like second nature now.
Yeah. But I remember once going through LaGuardia Airport in New York. This was probably in the 90s, early 90s, and put a bag through the screener, and the people, they wore like a blue blazer, but they were like private contractors, talking at the screening and never
Not even
looked,
looking.
My bag went through. I walked through. I didn't set off the alarm, but nobody looked at me. I just walked through, picked up my bag, and went. And so anybody who doesn't remember that time, if you're young enough, you don't remember. I mean, there was security at the airports, but it was not like it is today. And so that was in practical terms. Soon after. Was a product of that time. DC it was just for a while there. People loved us. It was the thing that people always saying, oh, geez, the Iraq War kind of took some of that away.
Right.
But initially, after 9/11, there was just this like love fest for the U.S. and you kind of felt it here. Everybody was just kind of shocked. Maybe in other parts of the country, if you were far enough away from New York or Washington, you didn't feel it as much. But like here, because our capital had been attacked, the Pentagon and in New York City, obviously for months, the cleanup and the recovery and all that. It was just, people, I think we were just shell-shocked for a while.
That's what they were saying. Allison was saying you guys were on all the time. It was always coverage for what, days, weeks?
Yeah, I think at least through Saturday, because it happened on a Tuesday morning. Saturday I was there because if I'm not mistaken, I think that it might have been the second Saturday night, but I thought it was the first one. They did the concert in New York City.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen.
Did
I
you
got to check
there?
the dates. No, but
Okay.
I was working at the Pentagon that night because we watched some of it. All the stations
had it,
simulcast it, and I know I was at the Pentagon at night. So I don't know if it was that first Saturday or the week after, but we were there for a long time.
Yeah, and once again, guys, you're looking at some shots of Shanksville, Pennsylvania from this morning. The Vice President was there for a commemoration ceremony, but also there were so many really going on today. And you were early this morning at the Pentagon.
No,
you
were
were
at
at
Joint Base Andrews.
Joint Base Andrews.
But
You were
will
far
tell
out.
You, the video you're looking at. I
Yeah.
think, Vice President went out onto the field. Like the memorial's up on like kind of the flight path, and then like where they're walking is out to where the plane actually crashed. And there's a stone marker, like a big rock, and that's where they actually walked out to the impact site after placing the wreath up at the memorial.
Yeah.
But I was at Joint Base Andrews.
Right.
Normally in the past we've gone to the Pentagon for a number of years, almost every year since. But they had a smallish ceremony.
Really?
But that's the DC Air National Guard is based there.
And the president had a speech there this morning as well?
No, that was at the the Pentagon Memorial.
Right. Okay.
So
So there were two different things.
Where I was it
Smaller.
it was low key smaller, but we had never gone there before, and we figured let's go, let's check it out. They had an American flag hanging off a Prince George's County and an Andrews Air Force Base ladder trucks, fire trucks.
Oh, okay.
And they had a flyover of 2 F-16s, and these F-16s are part of the 113th Air Fighter Wing, which were the jets that went scrambling right after the attacks. They sent them. I mean, they sent I think one from Langley and somewhere from Jersey, I think. But I believe jets also that day took off from Andrews and provided kind of like protection around the capital area.
Wow.
So they had it was a ceremony honoring first responders who left Joint Base Andrews, which I think at the time was Andrews Air Force Base. But
I think you're right.
At that time, and went over to the Pentagon to help with the search and recovery and all that. So they were honoring those people, and they had the flyover, and we just figured, you know what, Fox Network was going to be going to the Pentagon. Let's go check that out, which is what we did.
Right, and you were, I was going to say, isn't it Joint Base Andrews' anniversary or something coming up this week?
Yeah, I think it's maybe their 70th because
it is, because we're doing something on it.
On Friday, one of our zip trips.
Yeah, it's like a trip out.
We did that last year.
Okay.
It was their 69th anniversary.
Oh,
we're like,
so
geez, we got to come back to the
next
70th.
year.
And we are. Yeah,
well, I wonder if you'll be there. You might be.
I may or may not. Yeah, last year I was, but.
And you were I think you were at the Pentagon last Friday morning. You were just getting ready for the 9/11 remembrances.
Yeah, and I interviewed Jim Lachek, whose brother was killed.
Wow.
Was a civilian working at the Pentagon on 9/11, and Jim, the brother, is now the president of the Pentagon Memorial Fund, and they're raising money to open up a visitor and education center at the Pentagon. It won't be right there at the Pentagon Memorial. It'll be kind of like out on the roadway a little bit, but there'll be a walkway to it. And it's really, of the memorials, the one in Shanksville where you see the vice president has a great museum. And just this...
The Pentagon one, or this one does.
Up in Shanksville.
You've been?
Yeah.
I haven't been.
Yeah, I went 2 summers ago.
My goodness.
It was awesome. So Shanksville has a great museum and memorial. And I'll be right there. Our story about today's ceremonies in Dear Levine, just finishing up the edit, so I'll go check that out in a minute. But they have a great memorial and museum up in Shanksville, also in New York City. I just went there, took my 13-year-old daughter this spring. First time I've been there, which is
that
beautiful.
big
Where
building
they have
with
the fountains, and then it's down below. It's gorgeous. But the Pentagon Memorial doesn't have that. The memorial itself, with the benches, it's stunning.
It is, so visually.
The Pentagon Memorial Fund, the people who helped raise the money for it, and it was the first memorial to open, but it's the only one of the 3 that doesn't have like a museum or an education
So
center.
they want to do that now.
They're raising money. I think FedEx and the Marriott Family Foundation, the past Secretaries of Defense are on board. So they want to raise money, and they've got the plans and everything to open a visitor center so that when you come to DC and you go to the Pentagon Memorial, you'll also learn the story and find out more about what happened here. And so we previewed it on Friday because Jim and Lori, who is the widow of Dave Lachek, they were going to be at the Pentagon today. So we previewed on Friday the efforts to raise the money coming up on the 16th anniversary.
Wow, that was great. And have you seen the place of impact at the Pentagon? In that it's kind of have you gone
can,
in there?
Well, you can see, no,
I know
yes,
you can see it.
I did.
Right.
I did go in, and I remember there's a chapel there now. Like kind of,
yes.
They have a chapel there, and the rest of it you wouldn't necessarily know. I didn't go in. They let the press in at one point not long after. I don't know if it was months or a year or so after. But I mean, I think it was almost a year to the day they had it built up. So it must have been in the weeks and months after that they had some crews go in and see the damage once they'd kind of cleared away all the wreckage and the remains and what have you. I never saw that, but I did go in and there's a plaque there and there's this chapel, and so I have been in there, and then each year. And I just, every now and then, will just go by the Pentagon Memorial. When you're on, you're in the memorial itself, you can get fairly close up, and you can see the stone coloring is a little off.
Yeah, because they redid.
They redid it, but you can tell because of that.
Isn't that amazing?
This is the impact zone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's pretty powerful.
So great. Well, such a great story. I know you have to run and do your piece, but we'll have Bob on again, hanging out in the newsroom.
Absolutely.
You're always here, so thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Molly. You bet.
Awesome. Yeah. So a really good account from Bob, who was here 16 years ago at Fox
That's the
5,
crazy thing. That
isn't
it's
it?
been 16 years.
You, a couple other people have been was here. I know, and that it's been that long.
Yeah. It's like
I remember
16
it so
years.
well.
It's like, I mean, you blink, and how does that happen?
Yep. Yeah, it's really amazing. So.
All right, thank you, Molly.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. All right, guys. So we're gonna go over to the Pentagon now to replay President Trump there giving his first speech as president. It's really his first 9/11 as president. And we just played out Vice President Pence as well, and that's the footage that you're looking at right now as they went out to the site where the plane went down, Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. So now over to President Trump from earlier this morning, and we'll go from there and bring you back into the newsroom after that.
Every day, And it's in that spirit, ladies and gentlemen, that it's my honor to introduce our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you, Secretary Mattis, General Dunford, members of the Cabinet, members of the armed forces, first responders, and most importantly, to the families and to the survivors. It's an honor to join you on this very, very solemn location. This is an occasion that is extraordinary, and it'll always be extraordinary. Before we begin, I'd like to send our nation's prayers to everyone in the path of Hurricanes Irma and to everyone suffering through the devastation of Hurricane Harvey. These are storms of catastrophic severity, and we're marshaling the full resources of the federal government to help our fellow Americans in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, Tennessee, and all of those wonderful places and states in harm's way. When Americans are in need, Americans pull together, and we are one country. And when we face hardship, we emerge closer, stronger, and more determined than ever. We're gathered here today to remember a morning that started very much like this one. Parents dropped off their children at school. Travelers stood in line at airports and getting ready to board flights. Here at the Pentagon and at offices all across the country, people began their early meetings. Then our whole world changed. America was under attack, first at the World Trade Center, then here at the Pentagon, and then in Pennsylvania. The horror and anguish of that dark day were seared into our national memory forever. It was the worst attack on our country since Pearl Harbor, and even worse because this was an attack on civilians, innocent men, women, and children whose lives were taken so needlessly. For the families with us on this anniversary, we know that not a single day goes by when you don't think about the loved one stolen from your life. Today, our entire nation grieves with you, and with every family of those 2,977 innocent souls who were murdered by terrorists 16 years ago. Each family here today represents a son or daughter, a sister or brother, a mother or father who was taken from you on that terrible, terrible day. But no force on earth can ever take away your memories, diminish your love, or break your will to endure and carry on and go forward. Though we can never erase your pain or bring back those you lost, we can honor their sacrifice by pledging our resolve to do whatever we must to keep our people safe. On that day, not only did the world change, but we all changed. Our eyes were opened to the depths of the evil we face. But in that hour of darkness, we also came together with renewed purpose. Our differences never looked so small. Our common bonds never felt so strong. The sacrifice grounds on which we stand today are a monument to our national unity and to our strength. For more than 7 decades, the Pentagon has stood as a global symbol of American might, not only because of the great power contained within these halls, but because of the incredible character of the people who fill them. They secure our freedom. They defend our flag, and they support our courageous troops all around the world. Among the 184 brave Americans who perished on these grounds were young enlisted service members, dedicated civil servants who had worked here for decades, and veterans who served our nation in Korea, in Vietnam, and in the Middle East. All of them loved this country and pledged their very lives to protect it. That September morning, each of those brave Americans died as they had lived, as heroes, doing their duty and protecting us and our country. We mourn them, we honor them, and we pledge to never, ever forget them. We also remember and cherish the lives of the beloved Americans who boarded Flight 77 at Dulles Airport that morning. Every one of them had a family, a story, and beautiful dreams. Each of them had people they loved and who loved them back. And they all left behind a deep emptiness that their warmth and grace once filled so fully and so beautifully. The living, breathing soul of America wept with grief for every life taken on that day. We shed our tears in their memory, pledged our devotion in their honor, and turned our sorrow into an unstoppable resolve to achieve justice in their name. The terrorists who attacked us thought they could incite fear and weaken our spirit. But America cannot be intimidated, and those who try will soon join the long list of vanquished enemies who dared to test our mettle. In the years after September 11th, more than 5 million young men and women have joined the ranks of our great military to defend our country against barbaric forces of evil and destruction. American forces are relentlessly pursuing and destroying the enemy's all civilized people, ensuring, and these are horrible, horrible enemies, enemies like we've never seen before. But we're ensuring that they never again have a safe haven to launch attacks against our country. We are making plain to these savage killers that there is no dark corner beyond our reach, no sanctuary beyond our grasp, and nowhere to hide anywhere on this very large earth. Since 9/11, nearly 7,000 service members have given their lives fighting terrorists around the globe. Some of them rest just beyond this fence, in the shrine to our nation's heroes, on the grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. They came from all backgrounds, all races, all faiths, but they were all there to dedicate their lives, and they defend our one great American flag. They and every person who puts on the uniform has the love and gratitude of our entire nation. Today, as we stand on this hallowed ground, we are reminded of the timeless truth that when America is united, no force on earth can break us apart. No force. On the morning of 9/11, Pentagon police officer Isaac Hopel and a special person was one of the many heroes whose love for his fellow Americans knew no bounds. He was a mile away when he got the call over his radio that a plane had crashed into the Pentagon. He sped to the scene and raced into smoke and fire. Few people would have done it. He ducked under live electrical wires and trudged through puddles of jet fuel, only steps away from sparks and from vicious flame. In the pitch black, he began calling out people in need of help. Isaac heard faint voices, and he wanted to answer those faint voices. One by one, he carried people out of the burning rubble. He kept going back into the smoldering darkness, calling out to anyone who could hear, anyone who was alive. He saved as many as 20 people who had followed his voice. He carried 8 himself. For nearly 36 hours, Isaac kept on saving lives, serving our nation, and protecting our safety in our honor and our hour of need. And today, Isaac continues to do exactly that. Isaac still works at the Pentagon, now as a sergeant. He's on duty right now, and he's joined us here today for the ceremony. And this morning, all of us and all of America thank Isaac for his service. Where is Isaac? Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you. To Isaac and to every first responder and survivor of the attack you carry on the legacy of the friends you lost, you keep alive the memory of those who perished, and you make America proud. Very, very proud. To the family members with us today, I know that it's with a pained and heavy heart that you come back to this place. But by doing so, by choosing to persevere through the grief, the sorrow, you honor your heroes. You renew our courage, and you strengthen all of us. You really do. You strengthen all of us. Here on the west side of the Pentagon, terrorists tried to break our resolve. It's not going to happen. But where they left a mark, with fire and rubble, Americans defiantly raised the Stars and Stripes, our beautiful flag that for more than 2 centuries has graced our ships, flown in our skies, and led our brave heroes to victory after victory in battle. The flag that binds us all together as Americans, who cherish our values and protect our way of life. The flag that reminds us today of who we are, what we stand for, and why we fight. Woven into that beautiful flag is the story of our resolve. We have overcome every challenge, every single challenge, every one of them. We've triumphed over every evil and remained united as one nation under God. America does not bend. We do not waver, and we will never, ever yield. So here at this memorial, with hearts both sad and determined, we honor every hero who keeps us safe and free, and we pledge to work together, to fight together, and to overcome together every enemy and obstacle that's ever in our path. Our values will endure. Our people will thrive. Our nation will prevail, and the memory of our loved ones will never, ever die. Thank you. May God bless you. May God forever bless the great United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in place as the official party departs.
So that was the President and First Lady, guys, this morning at the Pentagon for their commemoration ceremony on the 16th anniversary of 9/11. With that, guys, we're going to just continue our coverage on our digital platforms, online and on the air tonight, of course, too. But you're watching our digital show during the middle of the day here in our newsroom at Fox 5. I'm going to flip it over to finish it out with this little piece from New York City this morning.
And look on today. We are deeply humbled.
As ceremonies were happening all across the nation, especially in New York and in D.C. here as well at the Pentagon, where we just saw the President. So we'll finish out here and see you guys tomorrow for regular coverage here on our YouTube and Facebook streams. And remember, you can join us on all our platforms, Fox 5 DC on Twitter, online, fox5dc.com, and right here on our YouTube channel as well. We hope that you have subscribed to our channel, and we'll see you for more coverage tomorrow at 11:30.